I don't know when it started. Maybe it was the way she looked at me that night across her kitchen table, or maybe it was long before that, in the smaller moments I didn't recognize until later. All I know is, she wasn't supposed to be mine. Her name was Anna. She was in her mid-40s, but the first time I saw her, I didn't think about her age. What I noticed was the way she carried herself, like she'd lived through storms I couldn't even name, but still walked into a room as if she refused to bend to them. Her laugh was quiet, almost reluctant, and when she smiled, it felt like something she hadn't done in a while. I was 23 then. Too young for her, too old to be dismissed as a kid, and still, somewhere in between. She was renting the apartment above mine, and at first, our connection was nothing more than those casual neighborly encounters. Passing in the stairwell. A quick good morning. Her mailbox sticking again, and me stepping in to tug it open for her. It should have stayed that way. Simple. Uncomplicated. But it didn't. That evening, I found myself knocking on her door, not for any real reason, just to return the book she had lent me a week earlier. Some novel I never quite finished. I told myself it was politeness, but my hand lingered on her door longer than it should have, my chest heavier than it needed to be. When she opened, the warm light from her apartment spilled into the hallway, soft against her skin. She wore a sweater, sleeves pulled halfway over her hands, as if she was hiding more than just her palms. "You didn't have to bring it back already," she said, glancing at the book I held out. I didn't finish it, I admitted, a little embarrassed. Too many words I didn't get. That made her smile. Just slightly. That's the point of books, you're not supposed to get everything. You just feel your way through. Her words sat heavier than they should have. She wasn't talking about the book, not really. At least, that's how it felt. I stepped inside when she moved back to let me through. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of her kettle, something sharp and comforting at the same time. There was a half-finished cup of tea on the counter, steam already fading. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the book lying between us like it mattered. But the silence, it wasn't just silence. It was charged. Her eyes didn't quite meet mine, and when they did, she looked away too quickly, like she was catching herself in a place she shouldn't be. I spoke more than I should have. About my day. About my job. About nothing, really. She nodded, listened, her hands wrapped tight around the mug she'd poured for herself. Her thumb traced the rim, slow, absent-minded, and for a moment, I wondered if she was nervous too. At one point, her laugh slipped out, quiet, sudden, and softer than anything I'd ever heard. It wasn't the sound itself that caught me. It was the way she looked surprised at her own laughter, as if she had forgotten what it felt like to let go, even for a second. And I wanted to be the reason she remembered. But I didn't say it. I couldn't. Because she wasn't mine to want. Not then. The clock ticked in the corner, louder than it had any right to be. The air pressed heavy between us. She glanced toward the door, then back at me, hesitation written in the small crease at the edge of her mouth. Before either of us could break the moment, her phone lit up on the counter. A name I didn't know flashed across the screen. She froze, her fingers tightening around her mug, and I just sat there, heart stumbling, waiting for her to look at me again. The phone finally stopped ringing. She didn't pick it up, didn't explain who it was, and I didn't ask. The silence afterward was heavier than any answer could have been. Anna shifted in her chair, pulling the sleeves of her sweater down until they swallowed her hands. She was always doing that, covering herself, like she wanted to disappear inside the fabric. "You don't talk much about yourself," I said, more to break the tension than anything. Her eyes flickered toward me, guarded. "That's because there isn't much worth saying." But there was. I knew it even before she let the word slip. "I was married for almost 20 years, she said finally. We built a house, had dreams, did the whole routine. And then, he found someone else. Someone younger." She let out a laugh that didn't sound like a laugh at all. "Ironic, isn't it?" My chest tightened. She didn't look at me when she said it, but the weight of her confession pressed between us. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that she was worth more than the man who had left. But the words caught in my throat, because saying them would mean revealing more than I should. I was supposed to be the neighbor kid, the one who helped her with the mailbox and carried her groceries up the stairs when her hands were full. Not the man sitting across from her, imagining what it would be like to brush that loose strand of hair away from her face. She changed the subject quickly, asking me about my family. I told her about my parents living out of state, about how I'd dropped out of college after 2 years because it didn't feel like it fit me. I didn't tell her how lost I felt most days, or how my friends seemed to be moving forward while I was stuck in place. But maybe she saw it anyway, because her gaze softened, and for once, she didn't look away. The age gap hung between us like a line we both knew not to cross. 23 and 46. Numbers that should have been enough to stop me. But sitting there, the years didn't feel like math, they felt like risk. Like temptation. At one point, she reached for the book still lying on the table, her fingers brushing the edge at the same time as mine. The touch was nothing, skin grazing skin, but it felt like too much. My hand jerked back too quickly, heat rising to my face. She noticed. Of course she noticed. "You're young," she said quietly, almost like she was reminding herself more than me. "Old enough," I replied, before I could stop myself. The words lingered in the air, reckless, and for a moment neither of us moved. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to argue, but instead she pressed them together, her thumb tracing the rim of her mug again. We didn't talk about it. We went back to safer subjects, her garden, my lousy landlord, the weather. But underneath the surface, the moment pulsed between us, undeniable. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door. My hand brushed hers as I passed her the book, deliberate this time, and she didn't pull away. Her breath caught, almost imperceptible, and in that fragile second, I knew, whatever this was, it wasn't going away. I told myself I wouldn't go back the next night. Or the one after that. But somehow, 3 days later, I was standing outside her door again with no excuse this time, my hand hovering over the wood like it had a pulse of its own. When she finally opened, she looked surprised, almost nervous. "You again," she said softly, but she didn't shut the door. Inside, the air smelled faintly of wine and lavender candles. A half-empty glass sat on the table beside a folded stack of papers. Divorce papers, I guessed, though I didn't ask. We talked. Not about anything important, work, neighbors, the stubborn leak in her sink, but every word carried weight, every pause heavier than what was said. At one point, she leaned across the table to grab her glass, and her arm brushed mine. The touch sent a current straight through me. I almost leaned in. God, I almost did. But then, footsteps. Heavy ones, coming up the stairwell. She stiffened. I looked at her, confused, until a man's voice echoed in the hall. "Anna? You home?" Her ex. Or maybe not ex yet. Her face went pale. She mouthed one word, "Please." I nodded. Without thinking, I slipped into the narrow hallway beside the kitchen, heart pounding as the front door opened. "Didn't think you'd be here tonight," the man said, his voice carrying the kind of familiarity that made my stomach twist. "I was just reading," Anna replied, her tone light but fragile. I could hear the shuffle of his shoes, the clink of his keys on the counter. My pulse hammered so hard I thought he might hear it through the walls. They spoke in low voices, about bills, about the house, about things that didn't matter but sounded too intimate. Every word reminded me, she wasn't mine to want. She still belonged to another life, one I had no part in. When the door finally closed behind him, I stepped back into the kitchen. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Her hands trembled as she poured the rest of the wine into her glass, almost spilling it. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You shouldn't be here." "Then tell me to leave," I said. She didn't. For a long moment, it was just us again, standing too close in the dim light. My hand brushed the back of hers, deliberate this time. She didn't pull away, didn't move at all, except for the faintest catch of her breath. I thought she might close the gap between us. I thought I might. But instead, she drew in a shaky breath and stepped back, creating space between us that felt colder than it should. "This is dangerous," she said, her voice breaking in the middle. "I know." My throat was tight. "But that doesn't change anything." Her eyes flicked to mine, full of something she wasn't ready to name. And then, she turned away, pressing her palm against the counter like she needed it to steady herself. Her phone buzzed again, louder this time against the counter. The same name. She didn't move to answer it. Just stared at the screen, then at me. I hated the way my chest twisted. I didn't know the man, didn't know the history between them, but the thought of her still belonging, even partly, to him made something inside me burn. "You should answer," I said, my voice low. Her eyes flickered, sharp. "And say what?" I didn't have an answer. Because the truth was, I didn't want her to. I wanted that part of her life to vanish, to leave her here, with me. She let out a shaky breath, silenced the call, and set the phone face down. The room seemed to contract with the gesture, pulling us closer into something neither of us could undo. "Why are you here, really?" she asked suddenly. Her voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her, gripping the edge of the counter until her knuckles turned white. The words tumbled out before I could swallow them back. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." The silence after that was brutal. My heart slammed against my ribs, but I didn't take it back. I couldn't. Her lips parted, as if to scold me, but no sound came out. Instead, she shook her head, almost angry. "You're too young. You don't understand what you're asking for." "I'm not asking for anything," I said quickly. When I'm not here, I want to be. And when I am here, it feels like I'm not supposed to leave." Her laugh was short, broken. "You think that's romantic?" "It's a mistake." "I'm a mistake." I stepped closer before I could stop myself. "You don't get to decide that for me." Her eyes finally locked on mine, and this time she didn't look away. The air was sharp, electric. Every muscle in my body screamed to close the distance, to touch her, to prove what words couldn't. But she stood frozen, torn between leaning in and bolting. Her jaw trembled as she whispered, "You remind me of what I lost. Of what I can't have anymore. And you remind me of everything I didn't know I needed." I shot back, my voice rougher than I meant. Her breath caught. She closed her eyes for a second, as if holding herself together. When they opened again, they were glassy, wet at the edges. "Stop," she said, but her voice cracked in the middle, betraying her. "If you don't stop, you what?" I pushed, reckless, desperate. Her hand lifted before she even realized, hovering just inches from my chest, not quite touching. My pulse jumped beneath the space where her palm almost rested. The world outside the apartment might as well not have existed. It was just us. Her trembling breath. My heartbeat. The unbearable question hanging between us. The knock rattled through the apartment, sharp and insistent. Anna froze, her hand still hovering against my chest. "Who is it?" I whispered. She didn't answer. Instead, she pulled back suddenly, wiping her palms down the sides of her sweater as if erasing what just happened. Then the knock came again, louder this time. "Anna, open up. I know you're in there." It was the same voice from the other night. Her ex. She swallowed hard, then turned to me, her face pale. "You need to go." But I couldn't move. "Not yet." "Does he still live here?" Her eyes darted to the door, then back to me. "No. Not anymore." "But he thinks," she stopped, shaking her head. "It doesn't matter. Please, just go." The knock turned into a pounding. My chest tightened. I should have left. But something about the way she stood, rigid, almost breaking, made me stay. Finally, she opened the door a crack, blocking me from sight. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. You haven't signed the papers, he said flatly. And I saw someone coming up here earlier. Don't tell me you're already, his voice dropped, low and accusing. I clenched my fists at my sides, my jaw locked. Get out, she snapped, pushing the door wider. My life is no longer yours to dictate. But he leaned in, trying to see past her. So there is someone. That was the breaking point. I stepped out from the hallway, my chest tight, and met his stare head-on. His expression shifted instantly, from smug to furious. You've got to be kidding me, he said, laughing bitterly. This? Him? Anna's breath hitched. No, go ahead, he said, pointing at me. You're what, 20? Playing house with someone twice your age? The words stung, not because they were true, but because they were meant to humiliate her. I saw her shoulders sink, shame flickering across her face before she masked it. That hurt worse than his ridicule. I wanted to hit him. God, I wanted to. But instead, I forced my voice steady. Maybe I am too young. But at least I don't throw away what I have. The silence after that was brutal. He sneered, muttered something under his breath, and finally stormed down the hall, his footsteps echoing until the building fell quiet again. When the door clicked shut, Anna didn't look at me. She leaned against the wall, her hands trembling, eyes fixed on the floor. You shouldn't have done that, she whispered. What was I supposed to do? Let him talk to you like that? Her eyes lifted then, glassy and torn. You don't understand. He doesn't just let go. He watches. He listens. He'll make this, us, impossible. Us. The word slipped out of her mouth like she hadn't meant to say it. I stepped closer, my voice low. Then tell me, do you want me to walk away? Her lips parted, but no sound came. Only silence. Only the faintest tremor of her hands, betraying her answer. Her hand trembled in mine. Not from the cold, not from weakness, but from the war raging inside her. I don't know, she whispered again, her voice thin, frayed at the edges. You do, I said quietly. You just don't want to admit it. She pulled her hand back, pacing the narrow strip of floor between the table and the door. Her sweater sleeves fell loose, dragging over her wrists. She clutched at them as if she could hide inside the fabric. This is insane, she muttered. You're 23. I've lived an entire life you can't even imagine. I've already been the wife, the mother, she stopped herself, pressing her palm against her forehead. And now look at me. Wanting something I shouldn't. Her words hit like a knife. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. And still, I couldn't let her bury this. Why is it wrong? I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. Because of a number? Because he'll talk? Because people will stare? Her eyes snapped to mine, flashing. Because it scares me. You scare me. The room went still. I stepped closer, carefully, until only inches stood between us. Then let me be honest. You scare me too. Every time I walk away, I wonder if I'll lose my chance to see you again. Every second I sit in that apartment downstairs, I'm thinking about the sound of your laugh, or the way you look when you forget to guard yourself. And maybe it's reckless, maybe it's stupid, but it's real. Her breath hitched, her lips parting as if to protest, but nothing came out. For the first time, she didn't look away. She held my gaze, raw and unshielded, her eyes shimmering with tears that hadn't fallen yet. I can't give you what you want, she said softly, but her voice faltered, breaking under its own weight. I don't know how to be wanted like that anymore. I reached for her hand again, slower this time. When my fingers brushed hers, she didn't move. She let me hold it. Then don't think about what I want, I said, my throat tight. Think about what you want. Right now. Just you. The silence stretched, thick and unbearable. She exhaled, long and shaky, and her shoulders finally dropped, as if she had been carrying something heavy for years and just let it fall. Her other hand rose, almost without permission, tracing the line of my jaw, feather light. My pulse thudded against her touch. God help me, she whispered, I don't want you to leave. The words cracked something open inside me. We didn't kiss. Not yet. But the space between us was gone. Her forehead leaned against mine, tentative, trembling, and in that fragile press of skin against skin, I knew, we had already crossed the line. The footsteps in the stairwell faded, and for once, Anna didn't flinch. She stayed where she was, her forehead resting against mine, her hand trembling against my cheek. I've been fighting this, she whispered. Every second, I told myself no. That it was wrong, that it couldn't last, that I'd only regret it. Her breath was uneven, fragile, but her grip on my hand was firm. But right now, I don't care. I just don't want to be afraid anymore. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, because words felt too thin for what pressed between us. Instead, I squeezed her hand, grounding her the way she had unknowingly grounded me these past weeks. She pulled back just enough to look at me, her eyes raw and unguarded. You're too young for me, she said again, but softer this time. No anger. No shame. Just truth. Maybe, I admitted. But I've never been more certain of anything. Her laugh slipped out, quiet, shaky, but real. You don't even know what you're certain of at 23. Except this, I said. Except you. Her face crumpled then, the fight draining out of her. And when she finally leaned in, it wasn't reckless or desperate. It was slow. Gentle. Like a decision she had carried for far too long. Her lips touched mine, hesitant at first, then deeper when I didn't pull away. Everything else, the phone calls, the knocks, the years between us, fell quiet. For once, there was no resistance. Just her. Just me. When we pulled apart, she rested her forehead against mine again, her voice breaking in the smallest way. I don't know where this goes. I can't promise it will be easy. I'm not asking for easy, I said. I'm asking for real. And in that moment, I knew we had chosen it, both of us. Messy. Flawed. Impossible in all the ways that made it matter. The days that followed weren't perfect. Her ex lingered, circling like a shadow that wouldn't let go. People whispered, the age gap hanging over us like a sign we couldn't tear down. But Anna started laughing more. Smiling without catching herself. And I found myself coming alive in ways I didn't know I'd been waiting for. One night, weeks later, we sat on her balcony under a sky smeared with stars. She leaned against my shoulder, quiet, thoughtful. You know, she said, her voice barely above the hum of the night, I used to think love was something you only got once. That when it was gone, you just learned to live without it. And now? I asked. She tilted her head toward me, a small smile curving her lips. Now I think maybe, love finds you again. Even when you think you're too old, too broken, too late. I didn't say anything. I just took her hand in mine, steady and sure, and for the first time, neither of us looked away. That's how it happened. How I fell for the girl who was never mine, until she was. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?